Episode 52, Keeping Tracks of Things. Originally written April 18, 2020. In 1985, Hasbro released their second wave of Transformer toys. Due to the overwhelming success of the first wave, the second wave was definitely more robust and diverse. Hasbro was basically grabbing whatever robots they could find from different companies in Japan and re-released them in the US with a new Autobot or Decepticon logo. Despite all the new kinds of Transformers introduced, they still managed to release a number of characters similar to those from 1984. And for the Autobots, this meant more car robots. Unlike the first year though, as a group, I thought that the new car robots were less exciting than their predecessors. A couple of them were basically repaints of previous molds, and the rest were mostly less interesting utility vehicles. Definitely nothing to write home about. Fortunately, there was one new car robot in the bunch that stood out. The Autobot Trax was the instant star of the group in my opinion. He was an all-new original mold from a well-proportioned robot he transformed into a cool and sleek shiny blue Corvette with a fiery red Autobot logo plastered on his hood. And that wasn't all. Trax actually had a third mode, which was a flying car hybrid. Unfortunately, I never actually owned the original Trax toy. I did get the next best thing though. Back when I was a kid, I had a friend who had too many toys that he cared for to keep in his house. So he left a bunch of them with me for safekeeping. This included a lot of original Diaclone robots, which were basically the Japanese precursors of the Transformers. So while I didn't have Trax per se, I had car robot number 21, Corvette Stingray, at my disposal, which was basically the same thing except colored red. It took some time before I got my first official Trax toy, years later in 2004. At this point, I was just getting back into collecting toys, and when the opportunity arose, I jumped at a chance of getting myself a more modern version of Trax from the Alternators line. Just like his original vintage toy, this one also transformed into a blue Corvette, albeit a more updated model. The toy also had considerably more advanced engineering as the line was geared more towards older collectors and car enthusiasts. And although he lacked some of the key features of the original toy, specifically the third flying car mode, he had enough visual design cues that easily identified him as Trax. A couple years later, Hasbro eventually released a more mainstream version of Trax as part of their 2010 Reveal the Shield line. While I was excited to see another new Trax toy, I wasn't quite thrilled at what we actually got. I found the toy a little short and stocky, which for me didn't quite fit the character. Once I got the toy, I took it upon myself to do a little modification to give him a little more height in robot mode. To be honest, it was a rather crude mod, which required an extra piece, a discarded piece of rubber tire, to keep him from shrinking back to his original height. Anyway, in 2015, we got what was meant to be the ultimate version of Trax for Takara's Masterpiece line. Unfortunately, it didn't get many rave reviews and is widely considered to be one of the weakest releases for that line. I myself didn't mind it, and I actually think it's a pretty good toy. Or maybe I'm just biased since I like the character. I actually have an interesting story of how I acquired my Masterpiece Trax. At the time, I was a regular customer at this one store in Green Hills, aka Manila Toy Central. I was pretty happy with the store as they would always alert me when new products would arrive, and they would always knock off a few hundred pesos from their store price for regular customers like myself. Anyway, when I went to Green Hills to get my newly arrived Trax from them, I decided to take my time and see how much Trax was selling in other stores. To my surprise and shock, I found out that my special price at my regular store was almost 1,000 pesos or $20 more expensive than the going rate in the other stores. But here's the kicker. So I came across this other store, a literal hole in the wall. The store was so small that only 2 customers could actually stand inside at the same time. So there I was next to another customer and I asked for a recheck on the price for Trax from the shop owner. When the owner confirmed the significantly lower price, the other guy turned to me and said, "Hey, I've got an extra Trax right here. I'll sell it to you for even less." So at the end of the day, I ended up getting a brand new Trax for almost 1,500 pesos or $25 cheaper than what I had originally planned to spend for at my first store. Needless to say, I never bought anything from that store again. Anyway, like I said, despite mostly negative reviews, I do like Masterpiece Trax. So much so that I eventually bought 2 more versions. As is the case with most Masterpiece toys, Takara often re-releases them in different colors as new characters to help recoup their investment in the toy mold. My second version of Trax was a black recolor, which was released in 2016 as a newly minted Decepticon named Loud Pedal. It was really just a case of right price at the right time during a trip to Japan. What I do like about this figure though, aside from the fact that he's colored black, was that Loud Pedal actually had the same face sculpt and weapon from the original vintage Trax toy, so that's some extra points added for nostalgia. And speaking of nostalgia, the third version of Masterpiece Trax that I got was a red repaint, which was rebranded as another Autobot named Road Rage. What was special about this one was that Road Rage was actually a female Autobot, and so Takara went the extra mile and resculpted a few new parts to give the toy a more feminine look. Of course, the main reason that she appealed to me was that she was red, just like the only version of the vintage toy that I grew up with. Finally, in 2021, we got a much-needed update in the main retail line of Transformers, with the War of Cybertron Kingdom Trax. Unlike all the previous releases aside from the Masterpiece version of course, this new Trax was slavishly based on his original G1 cartoon appearance, which was most welcome. Unfortunately though, as a whole, it wasn't one of Hasbro's best outputs. Despite looking pretty good, he was quite a chore to transform, at least for a mainline toy. And the robot end result suffers from a wonky leg design that doesn't quite lock in properly without some added mods. Still, on the shelf, it's the best looking Trax we've gotten for the main line, and I liked it enough to get a second one when they released a repainted Road Rage version of the toy. And so there you have it. While he wasn't quite my favorite Autobot, Trax will always have a special place in my collection as a star of the 1985 Autobot car lineup. So are there any other fans of Trax out there? Anyone think that we need a better version of this guy sooner rather than later? Let me know in the comments below and tell me your story. Thanks for watching Stories from the Toy Shelf Redux. If you enjoyed this story, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel to help me tell more. Until the next one.